I am the Holy Maiden of the Snake Clan. With a single bone flute, I can command 10,000 snakes to quell disasters and dispel venom. In my past life, a plague of snakes ravaged the kingdom of Chu. The Empress knelt before the sacred altar of Xiangxi for 3 days and nights, begging for my intervention. I played my bone flute, suppressing the tide of snakes across 3,000 miles, bringing peace to millions of citizens. After the disaster was resolved, Crown Prince Xiao Jinghuai asked for my hand in marriage, calling me the savior of Chu and the only wife he would ever have. I believed him and married him. On the day of his coronation, his very first imperial decree was to severely maim my limbs while I was 7 months pregnant and cast me into the pit of 10,000 snakes.
What, Holy Maiden of the Snake Clan? You are clearly just a demoness seeking attention. This plague of snakes should have been suppressed by Gigi. You stole her credit. She wept for 3 days because of this. Yet you show not a shred of remorse. Don't you claim to control snakes? Then let's see if these snakes dare to bite you.
Only then did I realize that state preceptor Su Gigi was the true love of Xiao Jinghuai's life. My unborn child tragically perished, and I too died, swarmed by 10,000 snakes. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day the snake plague broke out. The Empress was kneeling before me, begging me through her tears to save Chu. I put away my bone flute and said calmly, "Can the state preceptor not also control snakes? Since that is the case, the fate of Chu should be left in her hands." The chief eunuch was stunned, holding the 1,000 taels of gold in his hands, unsure of whether to put them down. A flurry of hurried footsteps approached. The newcomer wore a python robe, his eyes dark and sinister. It was Xiao Jinghuai. He looked at me with disgust in his eyes and spoke coldly.
Since the Holy Maiden has no intention of saving the kingdom, there is no need to trouble her further. This snake plague will be suppressed and managed by state preceptor Su Gigi.
I lowered my eyes, my fingertips curling slightly as the agonizing pain of my past life flashed through my mind. I couldn't make a sound. I could only watch with wide eyes as the swarm of snakes closed in on me bit by bit. Su Gigi stood nearby, sobbing, saying I got exactly what I deserved. I wanted to ask, was my crime saving the kingdom of Chu, or believing a man who repeatedly swore he loved only me? But I couldn't speak. Thousands upon thousands of snakes scrambled to get closer. My body endured the ultimate agony, yet my throat could make no sound. I could only watch with wide eyes as the swarm of snakes trapped me within. The last sight I saw before I died was Su Gigi standing at the cave entrance, looking down at me with a mocking sneer, with a mocking smile, as if looking at a piece of lowly rotten mud. Now, she still wore that look of pure, detached virtue. She smiled softly at me and said,
"Though I am of humble talent and shallow learning, I have also studied the art of sorcery and controlled snakes for several years. I am willing to offer my meager efforts for the people of Chu."
My heart stirred slightly. In my past life, Xiao Jinghuai only came to welcome me after I had descended the mountain. Yet now, he had rushed here before I even left the mountain, and he had brought Su Gigi with him. Could it be that he too had been reborn? I looked at Su Gigi's left hand, hidden inside her sleeve. There were still several scars from snake bites on it. The wound was dressed very sloppily. I couldn't help but sneer in my heart. What little skill she had consisted entirely of parlor tricks learned from street charlatans. She couldn't even tame a snake, yet she dared to claim she could suppress the disaster and save the nation. The Empress frowned slightly, clearly harboring some doubts. Although the state preceptor is versed in Taoist arts, she has never studied the snake-controlling techniques of Miaojiang. But the Holy Maiden hails from Miaojiang, having lived alongside snakes since childhood. Her skills must far surpass those of ordinary people. If mother does not believe her, Xiao Jinghuai spoke in a flat tone, yet every word carried a sharp edge.
I am willing to pledge my position as Crown Prince to guarantee Gigi's success.
As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd erupted into a clamor. Xiao Jinghuai turned his gaze toward me, his eyes filled with contempt.
"The state preceptor says that suppressing a snake plague relies on courage and mental discipline, not on playing tricks with a bone flute. Rumor has it you can control snakes. I wonder if you truly possess the ability, or if it is just heretical sorcery."
Su Gigi stepped forward, her robes pure white, yet her demeanor was arrogant.
"The Holy Maiden holds herself in high regard and disdains to take action. Though my knowledge is shallow, I am willing to do everything in my power to restore peace to the people."
She glanced at me, unable to hide the smugness in her eyes.
"Besides, times have changed. How can we still blindly believe in the old ways of Miaojiang?" The Empress hesitated for a moment,
but finally nodded.
"In that case, the state preceptor shall take charge of this matter."
I watched them quietly, my tone calm and steady. If the tide of snakes cannot be suppressed, how do the crown prince and the state preceptor intend to bear the consequences?
Those who jeopardize the nation's fate should naturally bear the blame. Save your demagoguery. I trust Gigi. Gigi acts solely to save the common people, unlike certain individuals who only wish to exploit this plague to curry favor and climb the ranks.
What a brilliant distortion of the truth. In my past life, it was clearly the Empress herself who came, kneeling to beg beg me to leave the mountain. How is it that now it has become me coveting wealth and lusting after the position of empress? Utterly ridiculous. Since Xiao Jinghuai trusts Su Jiji so much, then let him watch with his own eyes as she ruins everything. At this moment, Su Jiji smiled faintly, feigning an air of complete openness.
Since the Holy Maiden is unwilling to leave the mountain, please lend me your bone flute.
My brow twitched slightly. Before I could speak, she beat me to it, bowing deeply in salute.
The snake plague is at hand, and the people are suffering. If the Holy Maiden truly cares for the people, how could she begrudge lending a single bone flute?
Every word she spoke was gentle and proper, yet every sentence pushed me to become the target of public criticism. It was as if my refusal meant leaving people to die without lifting a finger, proving me to be utterly malicious. I sneered. You want to use the bone flute? That is a sacred treasure of Miaojiang, nurtured for 1,000 years. It is not something just anyone is worthy of touching. Su Jiji paused, her eyes turning red.
I am naturally not as pure and noble as the Holy Maiden, but if it can save the people, I do not fear any backlash.
She turned back to look at Xiao Jinghuai, calling out softly,
Your Highness.
Xiao Jinghuai cast a glance at me. His tone was extremely cold.
Fu Yao, since you are unwilling to act yourself, then hand over the bone flute. Aren't you supposed to be the most kind-hearted? Are you really going to watch the people suffer in disaster?
I stared intently at the two of them. One was putting on an act, while the other played along to pressure me.
The common people of the world, Samani must save them. Could it be that the Holy Maiden is afraid I will succeed?
As Su Jiji spoke, she turned her body slightly, making a highly submissive gesture of invitation.
If the Holy Maiden is truly selfless, please.
She deliberately spoke in front of all the court officials, in an extremely low voice, sounding incredibly humble. But that "please" word was like a knife, stabbing fiercely into my chest. Seeing that I had absolutely no intention of agreeing, Xiao Jinghuai's expression turned cold. He turned to the guards and ordered,
Bring up all the villagers of the Miao clan. Since she is so stubbornly heartless, then let her see how many lives this bone flute is worth.
First one, the Miao elder. Execute. Xiao Jinghuai sat high on the dais, his tone calm and unhurried, as if pronouncing an insignificant judgment. I suddenly looked up. Two guards dragged up a white-haired old man. That was the grand elder. Ever since I first learned snake charming, he had treated me like his own granddaughter, the very person who used to call me
Little Yao.
He knelt on the ground, his face covered in dust, looking at me with a trembling voice.
Little Yaoer, don't be afraid.
My fists clenched tightly. Just as I was about to speak, Xiao Jinghuai had already raised his hand. Immediately after, a warm liquid splattered violently across my face. I froze. Dazedly, I reached out to wipe the sticky wetness from my cheek. My nose was instantly filled with a strong metallic stench of blood. My stomach churned violently. I collapsed to my knees, vomiting agonizingly. Before my eyes was the figure of my father. He had been dragged up as well at some point, falling right beside my feet. My throat convulsed, and finally breaking down, I forced open my tightly shut lips to let out a hoarse scream. But even as this cry escaped me, it could bring nothing back. Continue. Xiao Jinghuai's voice was like ice, devoid of any warmth. Second one. It was my childhood playmate. He struggled desperately, but was pinned down forcefully by two soldiers.
Yao, do not hand over the bone flute under any circumstance.
He screamed with all his might. In the next instant, he fell to the ground. I couldn't even shed tears anymore. I only felt as though my chest was being filled with molten iron, burning me so intensely that I was about to burst. Third one. It was the medicine woman. Her legs were bad, and she was dragged roughly all the way by the soldiers, her face covered in deep bruises.
Little Yaoer,
She rasped out with a hoarse voice.
don't cry, don't.
Before her voice could even fade, she collapsed. The moment she fell, she didn't even have time to close her eyes. I wept and retched at the same time, digging my fingernails deep into my palms. Yet, I could change nothing. One by one, they met their tragic ends. At that moment, I finally understood the purpose of Xiao Jinghuai's arrival. He wanted to force me to submit. He wanted me to get down on my knees and hand over the bone flute, all so he could watch Su Jiji step on the bones of my Miao people to become the glorious grand astrologer. Suddenly, a childish voice rang out. My little sister was dragged out from the crowd. She was only 10 years old. She struggled, crying out,
Didn't you say you would protect the Meow people? Save me, please. I'm scared.
My eyes felt like they were bursting with pain. I desperately tried to rush forward, but several spears blocked me firmly in place. Let her go, I screamed hoarsely, but Xiao Jinghuai only said coldly, Where is the bone flute? I grit my teeth and remained silent. A sharp, piercing sound suddenly cut through the air, and my sister's crying stopped abruptly. Seeing my sister's tragic state, I felt as if I had been struck heavily by something, and my entire world shattered in an instant. I let out a crazed shriek, threw myself to the ground, and held her tightly. Mucus smeared all over my face. I couldn't even tell if I was crying or laughing anymore. The people on the platform looked on coldly, standing there like gods looking down on mortals. Su Jiji covered her mouth and giggled.
Your Highness, she seems to have gone mad.
Xiao Jinghua did not move at all, only saying that if I didn't hand over the bone flute, they would continue. In the next instant, a cold voice suddenly rang out in my ears.
All of you stop this instant.
Xiao Jinghua turned around, his expression changing slightly.
Emperor of Bei.
The man ignored him, walked through the corpses scattered all over the ground, and came up to me. He looked down at me, his tone gentle, yet filled with an uncontrollable heartache.
Fu Yao.
I recognized him, the sovereign of Beiyi, Lu Chen. He was once the youth who came to my clan seeking medical aid to seek a cure for a Gu curse. He knelt before my door for 3 days and 3 nights. Lu Chen raised his eyes, his gaze sweeping across the crowd, and his voice turned cold.
The state of Chu is indeed highly capable to force a young lady to this extent, all for a bone flute.
His gaze swept past the high platform, his tone chillingly cold.
Try hurting one more person. I will make your state of Chu pay the price.
The air froze in an instant. That golden token fell to the ground, making a dull clatter. Lu Chen looked at Su Jiji, his tone calm yet brook no argument.
Didn't you say your skills surpass the Holy Maiden of Miaojiang? Then go up there and let us see whether you actually know how to control snakes or not.
Su Jiji's body swayed slightly, clearly not expecting Lu Chen to make trouble for her in public. She looked toward Xiao Jinghua, her eyes shimmering with panicked tears. Yet, she ultimately forced herself to maintain a calm composure, lowering her head as she complied.
This lowly woman obeys your command.
An uproar broke out below the platform. Xiao Jinghua's face darkened a bit, but under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he could only say coldly,
In that case, let us begin.
I slowly raised my eyes, looking toward the restless swarm of snakes in the distance, the mockery in my eyes deepening. This battle was not to save the country, nor was it to vie for favor. It was a competition Su Jiji herself demanded. It was she who, with her own hands, unlocked the gates of hell. Su Jiji's expression was somewhat unsightly, but under the gaze of the entire venue, she could only steel herself and step forward. Her lips turned pale, as she barely managed to blow a few sharp whistles, yet the swarm of snakes did not react at all, becoming even more restless instead. She panicked. She then took out the medicinal powder she had prepared beforehand from her bosom, chanting incantations while scattering it. The swarm of snakes paused slightly, and she quickly seized the opportunity to call out loudly,
The snakes have already been tamed by me.
Lu Chen's brow did not even twitch, and he sneered.
Is that so?
The few snakes right before her could barely remain still, but the entire vast forest in the distance was still churning like waves. The snakes hissed incessantly, clearly on the verge of losing control.
If it weren't for the barrier set up by Miaojiang, the snakes would have been released long ago to harm the common people.
The crowd whispered among themselves. Su Jiji looked embarrassed, forcing herself to stand her ground. She turned back to look at Xiao Jinghua, her eyes brimming with tears. Xiao Jinghua's brow was tightly furrowed, and he did not say a word. Lu Chen turned his head to look at me.
Fu Yao, now it is your turn.
I slowly stepped forward, bringing the bone flute to my lips. As the flute's melody sounded, the swarm of snakes instantly froze. The flute's melody continued, and the snakes raised their heads as if drawn by it, changing their directions, one after another. I took step after step forward. The snakes slithered in from all directions, yet not a single one dared to draw close. Instead, they prostrated themselves on the ground as if submitting, no longer restless.
She really can control the snakes? 10,000 snakes submitting. This is the true power of the Holy Maiden.
Cries of astonishment rose and fell. Su Jiji's face was deathly pale, her hands tightly clutching her sleeves. Just as I finished playing the final note on the flute, the tide of snakes had almost completely subsided. Just as I was about to turn around, suddenly, a strange fragrance wafted over. My pupils contracted slightly. I whipped my head around. I saw a dark red pill burning in Su Jiji's palm, and quietly crushed it. As the wind blew, the fragrance instantly spread across the entire clearing. Don't breathe it in, I shouted at the top of my lungs. But it was already too late. The snakes grew agitated. The bone flute in my hand began to tremble slightly. A sense of oppression, both familiar and foreign, a sense of oppression instantly swept through my entire body. The next second, they erupted into a violent frenzy. The previously submissive tide of snakes collapsed like a broken dam, surging toward me, in unison.
Fu Yao.
Lu Chen roared in anger. Just as he was about to rush forward, he saw that I had already been enveloped by tens of thousands of snakes. From head to toe, they coiled around me inch by inch. Before I could even react, my chest was squeezed so hard it felt like it would burst. Those snakes seemed to have gone mad, constantly coiling, tightening, and clinging to me. They were so densely packed that the light of day was completely blocked out.
Stop this now.
Lu Chen drew his sword and tried to rush over, but he was blocked by the swarm of snakes. Su Jiji, however, smiled, a hint of madness appearing on her face. Hasn't she always wanted to prove that she is the Holy Maiden of Miaojiang? Then I shall see if she can actually walk out of there alive. The swarm of snakes swallowed me layer by layer, like a giant wave. Those cold, slimy snake bodies pressed tightly against my skin. With a foul, icy chill, they slithered into my robes, wrapping around my neck, my waist and abdomen, and my limbs. Every single bone creaked under the constriction, as if they would shatter in the next second. The bone flute at my chest was pressed hard by the snake's bodies. The porcelain white flute dug into my ribs. A shattering pain spread along my meridians to every corner of my body. Even breathing became a luxury. With every breath I took, my nose was filled with the stench of snake tongues and the rotting smell of mud, making my lungs ache from choking. My vision was blocked by layers of snake bodies, blurring into a shifting mass of dark green and black. Aside from the piercing hissing in my ears, there was the rustling of snake scales rubbing together, and Lu Chen's desperate hoarse shouting in the distance. That voice penetrated the barrier of the snakes, yet it felt as if it were separated by a thick fog, distant and muffled. Blood surged backward frantically in my veins. The light above my head was completely swallowed up. The sensation of suffocation bore down on me like a tidal wave. My internal organs felt as if they were being squeezed tightly by an invisible hand. I could clearly feel the icy touch of snake tongues brushing across my cheeks. I could feel the fangs of some venomous snakes pressing against my skin, only a hair's breadth away from piercing the flesh and injecting venom. My consciousness began to drift away in the darkness. Yet, scenes from my past life suddenly surged in my mind. Xiao Jinghuai's cold eyes when he severely injured my limbs, the way Su Jiji stood aside, clapping and laughing, the tragic state of the Miaozhang villagers harmed by the Chu army, and my younger sister's final, terrified cry. Those images were like poisoned daggers, stabbing fiercely into my fading consciousness, making my entire body tremble with pain. Just as my consciousness was about to completely collapse, and I was tempted to let myself fall into the darkness, a very soft, faint note from a flute suddenly sounded from my chest. The sound was clear and resonant, carrying a familiar warmth, instantly cutting through my surging thoughts. It was the bone flute. The sound did not come from my lips. Rather, it emanated from the bone flute itself, echoing softly within my body. It was as if a spiritual consciousness that had slept for 1,000 years was suddenly awakened, or like an old friend, reunited after a long separation, whispering in response. I snapped my eyes open. Within my once unfocused pupils, a sudden crimson flared. That was the bloodline of the Miao Scientess, showing signs of being completely awakened. It was the mark of the bone flute aligning with my soul. The snakes coiled around my body were still squeezing frantically, but the despair in my heart was instantly replaced by a towering rage. The resentment accumulated over 2 lifetimes. The pain, the anger, all erupted at this very moment. You dare to hurt me, I roared aloud. That voice was no longer my usual cold tone, but carried a tearing hoarseness, wrapped in an intimidating pressure. The moment my roar subsided, a sound wave invisible to the naked eye exploded from within my body. With me as the center, it swept outward toward the surrounding snakes. Wherever the sound wave passed, the snakes shuddered in unison. Those snakes that had been coiling frantically seemed suddenly hit by a freezing spell, stiffening in place. Immediately after, all the snakes coiled around my body suddenly loosened their grip at the exact same time. They curled up one after another, pressing their heads tightly against the ground, as if they had been gripped by their fatal spots. Not daring to make even the slightest movement, the entire swarm of snakes instantly fell into a deathly silence, save for an occasional weak hiss, carrying deep terror. I raised my hand and pushed away the layers of snake bodies on me. Those snakes actually retreated to both sides, as if avoiding a plague, clearing a path for me. I slowly stood up from among the snakes, splattered all over with snake blood and mud. My once neat Miao attire was torn to tatters, my black hair draped over my shoulders, stained with blood and dirt. Those crimson eyes shone with an intimidating brightness. At some point, the bone flute had returned to my palm. The body of the flute glowed with a faint, translucent white light, strikingly bright in the darkness, covered in snake blood, filled with a murderous aura. I stood in the midst of the endless swarm of snakes, like an asura walking out of a bloodbath. The coldness around me made the surrounding air seem to freeze. Sujiji, I have come to claim justice. My voice was calm, yet it carried a bone-chilling coldness. Word by word, it fell to the ground, like stones hitting ice, carrying a fracturing chill. When Su Jiji saw me walk out of the swarm of snakes completely unharmed, the frenzied smile on her face instantly froze at the corners of her mouth, as if carved there by a cold blade, unable to be wiped away. The pride and madness in her eyes were replaced by extreme terror. She backed up, repeatedly, stumbling and nearly falling to the ground. Her fingers clutched her robes tightly, her knuckles turning white, her voice trembling.
She is using sorcery. She didn't suppress the snake plague. She is a witch. She is a witch of Meow.
She screamed hysterically, trying to incite the surrounding court officials and commoners, trying to get everyone to stand on her side, trying to nail me to the pillar of shame as a witch. But the people around us only looked at me. There was no fear in their eyes, only shock and awe. The scene of 10,000 snakes submitting was still fresh in their minds. That was the true power of the Holy Maiden. How could a mere accusation of being a witch ever erase that? I stared at her and approached step by step, treading on snake blood with every stride. The bluestone pavement beneath my feet was stained dark red. Every single step felt as if I were stepping directly on Suji's heart, making her tremble uncontrollably. You call me a witch? I stopped in my tracks, looking down at her from above, a cold smile playing on the corners of my lips. But that dark red pill you used just now was a frenzy-controlling GU, wasn't it? Refined from the venomous insects of the southern border and mixed into a medicinal catalyst. The strange fragrance released after crushing it drives snakes into a frenzy, making them lose all reason. They will only pounce on whatever is in front of them, not even sparing their own kind. Suji's face instantly turned pale, completely devoid of color, as if all her strength had been drained from her, leaving her unable to even stand steady. She opened her mouth, wanting to defend herself, but not a single word came out. Did you think I wouldn't recognize it? I continued to speak, the chill in my voice growing even deeper. This frenzy-controlling DU is a forbidden DU of Miaozhang. It was classified as a forbidden art a century ago. Only heretical rogue cultivators would refine it in secret. For a charlatan who doesn't even know how to tame snakes, you've certainly learned quite a few wicked tricks. Did you think you could use this to harm me? Replace me as the Holy Maiden of Miaojiang. Take the position of the state preceptor of Chu and win Xiao Jinghuai's favor? You really are utterly malicious. Those last two words were spoken very softly by me, yet they were like a dagger dipped in ice, stabbing ruthlessly into Suji's heart. Her face turned pale green at these words, and her eyes instantly welled with tears. Large teardrops rolled down her cheeks. She suddenly turned her head to look at Xiao Jinghuai on the high platform, as if grasping at her last saving straw. Stumbling, she tried to throw herself into his arms, her voice choked with sobs.
Your Highness, she is framing me. She is spitting venom. I know nothing about any frenzy-controlling goo. I only wanted to suppress the snake plague. I did it for the people of Chu, and for you, Your Highness.
But Xiao Jinghuai stood where he was, without moving an inch. In his eyes, which had previously protected Sujiji, there now emerged a trace of hesitation and wariness. He looked at me, looking at the terrifying aura surrounding me, and at the ground covered in snakes that dared not move. He was afraid that I was truly enraged now, afraid that I would settle scores with him as well, afraid of the bone flute in my hand, and afraid of this awakened power of the Holy Maiden. I let out a cold laugh, the mockery in my eyes growing even stronger. It is too late. As my voice fell, I pressed the bone flute to my lips. The music rose again. This time, the melody was no longer a gentle soothing, but carried a sharp command. A clear, resonant sound pierced through the air and fell among the snakes. The previously quiet tide of snakes surged violently. Tens of thousands of snakes raised their heads in unison, flicking their scarlet tongues and making a hissing sound. In the next moment, the myriad of snakes gathered and crawled towards Sujiji like a tide. That scene was terrifying to the extreme.
Save me, Your Highness, save me.
Sujiji was scared out of her wits, screaming as she lunged toward Xiao Jinghuai, trying to hide behind him. But Xiao Jinghuai, as if disgusted by her, as if she were filthy, suddenly raised his hand and pushed her away with force. Caught off guard, Sujiji fell heavily to the ground. Her elbows and knees scraped against the bluestone pavement, leaving bloody grazes. She looked up at Xiao Jinghuai, her eyes filled with utter disbelief.
You pushed me. Have you lost your mind, Sujiji?
Sujiji. Xiao Jinghuai's face was incredibly grim.
How dare you use dark arts to summon a swarm of snakes? Do you want everyone here to be buried with you? Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused?
He pinned all the blame, as if the man who had just been willing to guarantee her safety with his title of crown prince was not him at all. Was not him. Sujiji was stunned, sitting on the cold bluestone slab, splattering onto the ground and spreading into small, wet patches.
I only wanted to hurt Fu Yao. I only wanted to.
Before she could finish her sentence, she was silenced by the terror of the approaching snakes. The snakes had already slithered to her feet, flicking their tongues, their cold eyes staring intently at her. Her entire body went stiff, not daring to make even a single move, and the clear, melodious tune came to an abrupt halt. The clear, melodious sound came to an abrupt halt. All the snakes crawling towards Sujiji stopped in unison, hovering just a foot away from her. Their tongues flicked continuously, carrying a bone-chilling cold, yet they did not take another step forward. I stood in the center of the pool of blood. Drenched in blood, my gaze was cold and detached, as if looking at an insignificant stranger. My voice was piercingly cold. Su-Gigi, your offenses. I have noted them all.
No, no please.
Su-Gigi retreated in a frenzy, propping herself up with her hands as she crawled backward in a pathetic state, but behind her were the steps of the high platform, leaving her with nowhere left to run. Weeping, she looked toward Xiao Jinghuai, her voice carrying a desperate plea. Tears blurred her eyes.
Save me. Ah, why? Save me. Didn't you say that I was the only one you loved? Didn't you say that I was your only true love in this lifetime? Save me.
Xiao Jinghuai's face turned pale and sallow, embarrassed to the absolute limit, yet his hands remained completely still. His knuckles turned white from clenching so hard. Of course he wouldn't save her, because he knew that if he dared to make a single move, I would instantly command the entire swarm of snakes to trap the two of them together. Trap them both. He is the crown prince of Chu, and he valued his position as heir to the throne even more. To him, Su-Gigi was nothing more than a chess piece to be used. Now that the piece had been discarded, how could he possibly risk his own life for it?
Fu Yao.
Lu Chen suddenly spoke up. He sheathed his sword and walked through the snakes step by step, coming to my side. The snakes parted to make way for him one after another, clearly recognizing me as their master, and consequently showing him a bit of wariness as well. He took off his dark outer robe and gently draped it over my shoulders. The robe still carried the faint scent of ambergris from his body, dispelling the cold, fishy stench that clung to me. His voice softened significantly, carrying a hint of admonishment.
That is enough. These snakes are on the verge of losing control. If this continues, I fear innocent people will be harmed.
I lowered my eyes, looking at the glowing bone flute in my palm. My fingertips gently brushed over the flute's body, and it vibrated slightly, as if responding to my emotions. I gently suppressed the surging anger in my heart, subduing the snake's urge to run wild once more. Lu Chen's voice sounded again, leaning close to my ear as he whispered,
If you truly want justice, I will get it for you. The blades of Bei are more than enough to deal with someone like her. Do not risk your own life again. For the sake of this deep-seated hatred, it is not worth it.
His words were like a spring of fresh water, extinguishing a portion of the hostility in my heart. I froze for a moment, then looked up. Before me was the cold, wet, and terrified swarm of snakes. There was the shivering, ashen-faced Su-Gigi. There was the dark-eyed, scheming Xiao Jinghuai, the scheming Xiao Jinghuai, and there were the panicked, trembling court officials and commoners nearby, along with the bodies of the Miaojiang clan members scattered all over the ground. That color made my eyes sting with pain. I slowly raised my head, my voice hoarse and carrying a trace of exhaustion, yet incredibly resolute. I do not want her life. Pausing for a moment, I looked at Su-Gigi, the coldness in my eyes intensifying. I want her ruined and disgraced, abandoned by everyone, tasting every bit of the suffering that my Miaojiang clan endured. Doesn't she want to be the Grand Master of Chu? Then let her properly bear the infamy of bringing disaster to the nation with these snakes, and let her, for the rest of her life, live under the condemnation of the world. Let her live in constant terror forever, wishing she were dead. The moment my words fell, the bone flute in my palm vibrated once more. A powerful force surged from the flute, spreading throughout the entire swarm of snakes. The snakes, which had been submissively prostrate just moments ago, all raised their heads in unison, their crimson eyes all locked onto me at once. Their tongues flickered, emitting bursts of hissing sounds. The air around them became agitated and restless. My heart skipped a beat, and the bone flute in my hand shook slightly, nearly slipping from my palm. A familiar sense of oppression washed over me again. It felt similar to when Suji crushed the madness controlling Gi earlier, yet it was even more intense and far more overbearing. Lu Chen also immediately sensed that something was wrong. With a tight frown, he shielded me and warily watched the surrounding snakes.
What is happening? Why are the snakes becoming restless again?
Simonon has tampered with them, I whispered, my knuckles turning white. As I gripped the bone flute, these snakes are actually starting to slip from my control. The commands of the bone flute, it seems they can no longer hear them. I could clearly feel the connection between the bone flute and the snakes being severed by an invisible force. That force was sinister and overbearing, carrying a heavy scent of goo poison. The flute sounded abruptly. I hurriedly blew the bone flute again, trying to use the power of the Holy Maiden to suppress the restlessness of the snakes. But as soon as the music started, a sudden, bursting pain shot through my temples. It felt as if countless needles were stabbing ruthlessly into my head. The pain blurred my vision, making my body sway. A sweet, metallic taste rushed up my throat. I forced myself to swallow it down, but warm liquid trickled from my nose, dripping onto the bone flute and spreading into a small dark red stain. Hiss, I gasped, shivering, as my vision went dark in waves. It felt as if something in my mind was being violently torn apart, breaking me out in a cold sweat from the pain. The bone flute in my hand also began to tremble slightly, and several fine cracks faintly appeared on its surface. That was a sign of a magical backlash. My pupils contracted sharply, and the truth dawned on me instantly. A chill rushed from the soles of my feet straight to the crown of my head. It is the backlash goo, I said through gritted teeth. Among these snakes, someone has slipped in the extremely rare, Backlash. Gosh, this go isn't meant to harm the snakes. It is specifically designed to rebound upon the one controlling the flute. As long as one plays the flute to control the snakes, the goo poison will travel along the sound waves to backlash onto the caster, disrupting their spiritual energy and causing them to lose control of the bone flute. Along with that, the snakes will also be affected by the gu poison, becoming wild and frenzied. I looked at Su Gigi, the rage in my eyes nearly spilling over. What a clever scheme Su Gigi had plotted. She had calculated everything long ago. Not only did she prepare the frenzy controlling DU, but she also planted the backlash goo among the snakes, all to doom me to death. And to completely replace me. I felt a surge of nausea in my chest, the metallic taste in my throat growing stronger. My steps faltered, and I nearly collapsed. Lu Chen was quick to react. He reached out and grabbed my arm, holding me steady. His face was incredibly dark, the anger in his eyes almost solidifying.
What a malicious woman. To dare plot against you like this.
Su Gigi suddenly laughed, sitting on the ground. She watched my swaying figure. The tear stains on her face were not yet dry, yet a twisted look of joy curled the corners of her mouth. She clapped her hands, as if she were witnessing the most delightful thing, her voice carrying a hint of madness.
Did you think you won? Fu Yao, you are too naive. These snakes were prepared for you from the very beginning. The frenzy controlling goo was just an appetizer. The backlash goo is the grand gift I prepared for you. I knew long ago that you could neutralize the frenzy controlling gi, and I knew the bone flute would recognize you as its master, but I wanted you to taste what it feels like to have your spiritual energy backlash, your bone flute seized, and even the snakes refusing to obey your commands.
Supporting herself, she stood up and walked toward me step by step, her eyes filled with triumph and madness.
Aren't you the Holy Maiden of Miaojiang? Can't you make 10,000 snakes submit? What about now? You can't even protect yourself. You can't even hold the bone flute steady. You are nothing but a joke. This is the consequence of your self-righteousness. This is the price for trying to steal His Highness from me, and for trying to snatch the position of Grand Master from me.
I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to endure the surging goo poison and the bursting pain within my body. I blew the bone flute once more, trying to make one last attempt, but the tone was no longer pure. It was no longer clear and melodious, but had instead become raspy and harsh, as if it had been contaminated by something, making anyone who heard it feel deeply agitated. As the sound of the flute faded, the tide of snakes suddenly erupted. The snakes that could still barely be controlled completely lost all restraint at this moment, no longer obeying my commands. They lunged frantically in all directions instead, slithering toward the court officials and the commoners. The scene instantly fell into chaos. Retreat, quickly. The snakes are coming, someone screamed in terror. The officials and commoners scattered and fled in all directions, shoving one another, crying and shouting, thrown into utter confusion.
Your Highness, quickly protect the Empress.
The guards around the Empress hastily shielded her as she retreated, constantly swinging their long swords to slash at the approaching snakes. But there were too many snakes. It was impossible to cut them all down.
Your Highness, watch out.
The guards around Xiao Jinghuai also rushed forward one after another, shielding Xiao Jinghuai in the center as they fought off the snakes. But Xiao Jinghuai's face was incredibly grim. He looked at the chaos before him, watching the snakes that kept lunging forward, his eyes filled with panic. Amidst the chaos, Su Gigi laughed extremely loudly. She stood high upon the platform, looking at the devastation all around, looking at me as I teetered on the brink of collapse, her voice dripping with heavy mockery.
Fu Yao, look, this is the outcome you wanted. You kept claiming you wanted to protect the people, but now, because of you, the entire Chu Palace is about to be submerged by snakes. You are the true evil temptress bringing ruin to the state. You are the sinner of the state of Chu.
My body was already on the verge of giving out. The goo poison was spreading frantically inside me, the pain in my temples growing more and more intense, and my vision kept blacking out. My ears were filled with the sounds of crying, clashing weapons, and the hissing of the snakes. Those sounds were like countless needles, stabbing violently into my eardrums, hurting so badly that I almost lost consciousness. I could feel Lu Chen's grip, supporting me growing tighter and tighter, and I could feel him desperately trying to protect me, but I felt my own strength slipping away bit by bit. The bone flute in my hand grew heavier and heavier until I could barely hold on to it, just when I thought I was truly going to be defeated here, and that Su Gigi's conspiracy was truly going to succeed. A low flute note suddenly sounded from the palm of my hand. That note was clear, gentle, and carried a powerful force, completely different from the harsh flute sound I had played just moments ago. I was stunned. It really wasn't me playing it. The bone flute was sounding on its own. It was spontaneously producing the music, as if resonating with me, and as if awakening the last of the strength within my body. I opened my mouth, wanting to speak, but felt a surge of icy energy flow along the body of the bone flute and pour into my body. That energy was crisp and pure, following my meridians to circulate through my entire body. Wherever it passed, the splitting pain and the surging goo poison were instantly suppressed. My originally chaotic spiritual energy also began to recover bit by bit. That was the true power of the bone flute. flute, the primordial power of the Miaojiang clan's 1,000-year-old sacred relic. It was not merely an instrument for controlling snakes. It is a spiritual entity intimately linked to the bloodline of the Miaojiang Holy Maiden. It does not merely obey my commands. It has truly recognized me as its master. In moments when I encounter danger and when my spiritual energy is entirely depleted, it will proactively awaken its primordial power to protect me and keep me safe. I slowly opened my eyes. My eyes, which had been crimson, gradually regained their clarity, yet they were now far deeper and far colder than ever before. My gaze turned cold, inch by inch, growing fierce. The hostile aura around me surged once more, but this time, it was far more stable and far more intimidating. I raised my hand and tightly gripped the bone flute in my palm. That icy power flowed continuously from the flute's body, merging into my own. Taking a deep breath, my voice, like a sudden clap of thunder, erupted amidst the tide of snakes, carrying an unquestionable authority. All of you, stop. This time, there was no sound of the flute, only the command spoken from my mouth. Yet that command carried the primordial power of the bone flute and the bloodline pressure of the Miaojiang Holy Maiden. It pierced through all the chaos and noise, falling clearly into the ears of every single snake. As if jolted awake by lightning, the snakes froze in unison. The snakes that had been lunging frantically in all directions instantly halted in their tracks, no longer moving. They slowly lowered their heads, bowing to the ground and whimpering, emitting submissive hisses. Then, they actually began to retreat slowly, withdrawing bit by bit to their original positions. Even the few snakes besides Sujiji that were still thrashing frantically quietly turned around and slipped into the nearby forest. In just a brief moment, the chaotic scene returned to absolute calm. Only the court officials and commoners who had fled in all directions were still shivering, not daring to make a sound. The entire area fell dead silent. Even a needle dropping on the ground could be heard with perfect clarity. Everyone's eyes unanimously fell upon me, filled with awe and terror. There was no longer a single shred of doubt. I stood in the center of the snake tide, my blood-drenched body wrapped in a dark robe, my black hair disheveled. A cold light flashed in my eyes, and a chilling smile curled at the corner of my lips. My voice, cold to the bone, addressed Suji word by word. Sujiji, didn't you want to trap me in this tide of snakes? Didn't you want to ruin my reputation and make me the sinner of the state of Chu? What a pity. These snakes are mine. From beginning to end, they have always been mine. The bone flute recognizes me as its master, and the snakes obey my command. These petty tricks of yours, before me, are nothing but showing off before a master, only bringing humiliation upon yourself. Sujiji's face instantly turned as pale as paper, devoid of any color. Her lips trembled as if something were blocking her throat, rendering her unable to utter a single word of rebuttal. She looked at me, then at the snakes that had once again submitted on the ground. The smugness and madness in her eyes were instantly replaced by extreme terror and despair. Her body swayed, and she nearly collapsed to the ground again. I slowly took a step and walked towards Sujiji, the bone flute spinning gently between my fingers, glowing with a faint, translucent white light. With every step I took, I exuded an intimidating pressure, forcing Sujiji to retreat in spite of herself. I should thank you, Sujiji. I stopped in my tracks, watching her tremble, the cold smile on my lips deepening. If you hadn't insisted on stealing the bone flute, if you hadn't used the madness controlling Giyu to harm me, and if you hadn't planted the death goo among the snakes, using every possible means to put me to death, I might not have been able to awaken its true power. I might not have been able to fuse the bone flute completely with my bloodline, and I might not have truly mastered the power of these 10,000 snakes. Sujiji's pupils contracted sharply, her eyes filled with utter disbelief. She shook her head, her voice trembling.
You are lying. This is impossible. The source power of the bone flute can only be awakened by successive generations of Miaojiang Holy Maidens at the brink of life and death. How could you possibly?
How could I not? I leaned down, looking at her pale face, and said word by word, I am the current Holy Maiden of Miaojiang, possessing the purest bloodline of all generations. The bone flute was meant to recognize me as its master. The bone flute is named Demon, the sacred artifact that has guarded Miaojiang for 1,000 years. It harbors the spiritual consciousness of the Miaojiang ancestors. Only a true Holy Maiden, having survived the test of life and death and fully awakened her bloodline, can awaken its true soul, achieve a spiritual bond with it, and truly control its power. If anyone else tries to take it by force, or uses dark arts to plot against the keeper of the flute, it will trigger a backlash from the bone flute, causing them to suffer the consequences of their own evil. Just now, you already tasted those consequences, didn't you? Sujiji clutched her chest, her body trembling violently, her eyes filled with terror and agony. Of course, she had tasted it. At the moment of the bone flute's backlash, a powerful force had surged back through the death goo she had planted, striking her own body. Her internal organs felt as if they had been violently crushed, causing pains so intense, she nearly fainted. Yet she had assumed it was due to the snake tide spiraling out of control, thinking it was merely the residual shockwave of my spiritual backlash. Only now, hearing my words, did she realize that it was the backlash from the bone flute itself, her own wicked art, ultimately destroying her. I stood up straight and turned to look at the distant, cowering, and silent Xiao Jinghuai standing behind his guards. He looked at me with a gaze filled with apprehension, panic, and a barely perceptible trace of regret. My voice was bone-chillingly cold. As I spoke, word by word, the ancestral teachings of Miaojiang state that the bone flute must never be lent, never be gifted, and never be touched by outsiders. Those who violate this will surely suffer divine retribution and trigger a plague of snakes. Back then, you forced me to hand over the bone flute, claiming my refusal was cruel and showed a disregard for the lives of the people. But did you know? Once the bone flute falls into the hands of an outsider, once it is controlled by someone with wicked intentions, it will instantly spiral out of control, unleashing a massive power that will immediately bring about a snake plague, plunging the entire state of Chu into peril. I withdrew my gaze and looked back at Sujiji, my eyes sharp as blades, piercing straight to her heart, my voice dripping with heavy sarcasm. Do still dare to touch it? Sujiji shook her head violently, as if she had suffered a massive shock. Her lips turned blue, and she stammered repeatedly.
I would never dare to again. I don't want the bone flute anymore. I don't want the position of Grand Master anymore. I beg of you, spare me, Fu Yao. I beg of you.
She knelt on the ground, kowtowing to me repeatedly. Her forehead struck the bluestone floor, making dull, heavy thuds, and soon she began to bleed. Yet she seemed unable to feel the pain, doing nothing but begging for mercy, completely stripped of her former arrogance and madness. Too late, my voice turned icy cold, devoid of even a shred of pity. With a wave of my hand, I commanded softly, "Rise." As soon as the words left my mouth, the tide of snakes surged in response. Tens of thousands of snakes gathered once more, surrounding Sujiji like a rising flood, flicking their scarlet tongues. They glared at her intently, leaving her too terrified to even move. She could only remain on her knees, shivering uncontrollably, scared out of her wits. She wept as she crawled on her knees toward Xiao Jinghuai, trying once again to seek his protection. Her voice carried a desperate plea.
Huai, save me. Hurry and save me. She has gone mad. She really wants to harm me. Didn't you say that as long as I could suppress the snake plague, you would marry me as your crown princess and make me the empress of Chu? Now that I cannot do it, are you going to abandon me too? Why? I beg of you, save me.
She clung tightly to Xiao Jinghuai's leg, her face a messy mix of tears and snot, looking utterly pathetic. But Xiao Jinghuai only looked down at her, remaining motionless for a long time. There was not a single trace of pity on his face, only deep disgust and hesitation. In the end, he raised his hand and gently pried her fingers off his robes, one by one. His movements were gentle, yet they carried an irresistible force. His tone was flat, without a single ripple of emotion. Yet, it was like a knife, stabbing deeply into Sujiji's heart. You have disappointed me too much. Sujiji froze where she was, staring blankly at Xiao Jinghuai's retreating back. As if all her strength had been drained, she slumped onto the ground, her eyes hollow, muttering to herself.
Why? You said that you only loved me. You said I was your destined one. You said so.
Xiao Jinghuai did not look back. He did not even spare Sujiji another glance, but instead fixed his gaze on me. His eyes were dark, carrying a hint of venomous malice. He spoke through gritted teeth, his voice filled with resentment.
Fu Yao, all of this was designed by you, wasn't it? You deliberately pretended to be unwilling to hand over the bone flute, deliberately provoked her into acting, and deliberately let her use the madness, controlling GEU and the life-binding GU to harm you, just to take the opportunity to awaken the bone flute's original power. Reclaim the bone flute and win everyone's sympathy, to make everyone believe you are the true saintess, and to utterly ruin Sujiji's reputation. Don't you just want to suppress the snake plague once more, and use this opportunity to force me to marry you again, to force me to crown you as the crown princess, and even force me to make you empress?
He took a step toward me, the resentment in his eyes growing even deeper.
Fu Yao, don't you think you've gone too far? Just to become the empress of Chu, and to gain supreme power, you don't even care about the lives of your own clansmen. You actually use the blood of your own people to pave your path to becoming empress. Do you have even a shred of humanity left?
I let out a cold sneer, as if I had just heard the most ridiculous joke. Looking at Xiao Jinghuai's hypocritical face, the hatred in my heart surged. Are you saying I should have handed over the bone flute on a silver platter and then watched her climb to power by stepping on the corpses of my Miaojiang people, to watch her become the Grand Master of Chu, and watch her marry you, to become the crown princess of Chu? Or perhaps I should have done what I did in my past life, cast aside all my pride, kneel down and beg you to spare the lives of my Miaojiang clansmen, beg you to let me go, only to have you severely cripple my limbs, abandon me in a perilous place, and leave my Miaojiang clan to suffer a tragic catastrophe? My words were like sharp daggers, stabbing deeply into Xiao Jinghuai's heart. His face instantly contorted, and the resentment in his eyes turned into humiliated rage.
What exactly do you want?
I looked at him without a single trace of warmth in my eyes. Word by word, my voice fell clearly into his ears and into the ears of everyone present. I want everything you owe me. Pay it all back. Everything you did to me in our past life and in this life. Everything you have done to my Miaojiang clansmen. I want you to pay it back 1,000-fold. Every insult that came out of your mouth. I want you to swallow back yourself. Every ounce of suffering you made me endure. I want you to experience firsthand. However miserable I was, that is exactly how miserable you shall be. Xiao Jinghuai's face turned ashen at my words. The fury in his chest, no longer containable. He suddenly drew the long sword from his waist, pointing the sharp blade directly at my heart. His eyes filled with murderous intent.
If you dare say another word, I will execute you right now.
You wouldn't dare. Lu Chen's voice suddenly rang out. He took a step forward, shielding me behind him, his long sword unsheathed with a ring. Its blade clashing directly against Xiao Jinghuai's sword. The murderous intent in his eyes almost solidified, carrying an overbearing pressure that looked down upon the world.
If you touch a single hair on her head, I will destroy a city of your Chu state. If you harm her in the slightest, I will trample half of Chu's territory to the ground. If you don't believe me, you are welcome to try. The iron cavalry of Bei is already on standby at the northern border of Chu. With just one word from me, they will flatten the Chu state.
Xiao Jinghuai froze completely, the hand holding his sword trembling slightly. He looked at the murderous intent in Lu Chen's eyes, looked at the swarms of snakes surrounding me, and looked at the terrified expressions of the court officials around him. He knew that Lu Chen meant what he said, and would absolutely do it. Bei was powerful and prosperous, and its iron cavalry was fierce and brave. Chu was simply no match for them. If he truly enraged Lu Chen, Chu would inevitably fall into an abyss of ruin. After a long silence, he gritted his teeth fiercely and sheathed his long sword. He flung his sleeve back violently, turned, and walked away. He did not spare another glance at Su Jiji, who was kneeling on the ground, nor did he look at me again. Watching Xiao Jinghuai's departing figure, Su Jiji fell into utter despair. She slumped onto the ground, completely surrounded by the swarm of snakes. She wept and wailed Xiao Jinghuai's name, all the way, begging him to turn back. But Xiao Jinghuai's figure only grew more distant, finally, vanishing from sight, without ever offering another word. Only blood and snakes remained across the grounds, along with the fallen bodies of the Miaojiang people. That crimson color stained the entire bluestone courtyard red, stinging the eyes of anyone who looked. I lowered my gaze, and looked at the bone flute in my palm. The faint glow on the flute gradually faded, returning to its original porcelain white. Yet it appeared even more lustrous than before. I gently brushed my fingers over the flute and spoke in a deep voice. My voice was not loud, yet it fell clearly into everyone's ears. From this day forward, I Fu Yao will no longer serve the state of Chu. The Miaojiang clan will never again be used by Chu. The lives of the Miaojiang people are not for anyone to sacrifice to the heavens as they please, nor are they for anyone to harm at their own whim. Those who harm my Miaojiang people, I will surely make them pay 100-fold. Lu Chen stood by my side, gently patted my shoulder, and asked in a low voice,
"What do you plan to do next? I am afraid Chu will not let this matter rest, and Xiao Jinghuai will not let you go either."
I gently wiped the bloodstains from my hands, raised my eyes, and looked toward the horizon. Dark clouds were rolling in, as if portending an even greater storm. A cold light flashed in my eyes, and my voice was firm. What they owe me, and what they owe Miaojiang, I will take back piece by piece. I will hold Chu accountable for Xiao Jinghuai's sins. The blood debt they owe me, I will make Chu repay, bit by bit. I returned to Bei with Lu Chen, fearing I might encounter danger on the road. Lu Chen personally escorted me with Bei's elite guards, traveling north from the capital of Chu toward Bei. Lu Chen's carriage was extremely spacious, lined with soft fox fur, and a stove was lit inside to dispel the winter chill. Yet, I could not find peace of mind. Over and over, my mind replayed the scenes of the Miaojiang people meeting their tragic ends, the small figure of my younger sister, and the hypocritical faces of Xiao Jinghuai and Su Jiji. The hatred in my heart had never dissipated. Lu Chen seemed to read my thoughts. He often sat beside me, keeping me company and talking to me. Sometimes he spoke of Bei's local customs, and sometimes of interesting anecdotes from the imperial court, trying to distract me, but I was always absent-minded, only offering an occasional brief response. He did not get annoyed either, silently pouring hot tea for me and draping a warm cloak over my shoulders, using his own way to silently accompany me. Our journey was relatively peaceful. The people of the Chu capital seemed to fear Lu Chen's power and did not dare to act lightly. But just as we arrived at the border between Great Chu and Bei and stepped into the very first city within Bei's territory, Linbian City, the unexpected happened after all. It was was at dusk, when the setting sun was like blood, dyeing half the sky red. Our carriage reached Linbian City, at a valley in the outskirts. The surrounding area was completely deserted, with nothing but dense woods. Just then, several stray arrows suddenly shot out from the forest, shooting straight toward the carriage. The guards reacted swiftly, instantly drawing their swords to deflect them, but there were far too many arrows to block them all.
It is an ambush. Protect His Majesty and the Holy Maiden.
The guard commander bellowed fiercely. The elite guards of Bei immediately formed a circle, shielding the carriage in the center as they clashed with the black-clad men, locked in a fierce struggle. Amidst the flashing of blades, I lifted the carriage curtain and stepped down from the carriage, clutching the bone flute in my palm. A cold light flashed in my eyes. I recognized the attire of those black-clad men at a single glance. Those were the uniforms of the Chu Imperial Guard. The robes were embroidered with the black bird pattern of Chu, and the weapons in their hands were the dark iron sabers exclusive to the Chu Imperial Guard. These people were coming for me. They were from Chu. It seems Xiao Jinghua is still not reconciled to this, and has actually brought his troops here in person. Lu Chen stood by my side, his gaze sweeping over the black-clad men, before finally landing on the figure, in bright yellow, at the edge of the forest. The murderous intent in his eyes grew even stronger. I followed his gaze and looked over, only to see Xiao Jinghua, dressed in his crown prince court robes, mounted on a white horse, standing at the edge of the forest, followed by thousands of Chu Imperial guards behind him, forming a dense, dark mass surrounding the entire valley. When he saw me, a cold sneer involuntarily curled his lips as he spurred his horse forward, emerging from the woods. His voice, dripping with deep malice and triumph, echoed throughout the valley.
Fu Yao, you harmed our Grand Master, and now you have brought a foreign emperor to stir up trouble, colluding with Bei to covet our Chu territory. Did you really think you could escape unscathed?
He raised his hand and cracked his whip, his voice turning even colder.
Did you know there has long been a secret imperial decree in the court to use your identity as the Holy Maiden of Miaojiang and the bone flute in your hands to suppress the snake plague? Once the snake plague is settled, regardless of your success or failure, Miaojiang is to be completely wiped out to eliminate any future trouble. You and your clan, we're destined from the very beginning to meet a tragic end. None of you were meant to survive.
His words were like a sudden clap of thunder, blasted in my ears. My heart skipped a beat, and I suddenly looked toward the Chu military banner, fluttering in the wind. My mind went completely blank. A secret decree. So, from the very beginning, this was all a conspiracy. The snake plague might have been real, but the royal family of Chu never intended to let me go from the start, nor did they intend to spare the Miaojiang clan. They used me to control the snakes, used me to suppress the snake plague, and once the plague was settled, they would use the charge of the Holy Maiden of Miaojiang instigating the snake plague and bringing disaster to the country and its people under the charge of to completely wipe out my Miaojiang clan, eliminating us forever. The snake plague was a mere pretext. Using me was the reality. Exterminating my clan was their true objective. I felt a sudden chill rush from the soles of my feet, straight to the crown of my head. The catastrophe that befell Miaojiang in my past life was not, as it turns out, because I refused to hand over the bone flute, nor was it because of Su Jiji's framing, but rather a strategy long since decided by the Chu imperial family. My people and I were nothing but pawns in their hands, pawns to be discarded once their usefulness was spent.
By imperial decree, execute the Miao witch, Fu Yao. Show no mercy. Anyone who dares to obstruct shall be executed for treason and colluding with the enemy. Execute her.
Xiao Jinghuai's voice boomed like a bell. With a wave of his spear, he gave the order to attack. The dense, dark mass of the Chu Imperial Guard surged toward us like a tidal wave, their battle cries shaking the heavens. The murderous light in my eyes flared up once more. The resentment of 2 lifetimes, the agony of 2 lifetimes, erupted entirely at this very moment. The bone flute in my hand trembled slightly, as if responding to my wrath. I raised my hand, pressed the bone flute to my lips, and the music suddenly burst forth, clear, sharp, and fierce, carrying a world-destroying rage. It echoed throughout the entire valley. Today, I will make you pay the price for my Miao people. As the flute's melody fell from the woods surrounding the valley, bursts of hissing suddenly echoed. In the next instant, a tide of snakes erupted violently. Countless snakes slithered out from the woods, burrowed out from the soil, and slipped out from the crevices of the rocks, surging toward the Chu Imperial Guard like a flood. Among those snakes, there were green pit vipers, cobras, 100 pacers, and countless exotic serpents of the Miao region, bearing deadly venom and monstrous wrath. They charged at the Chu soldiers. Battle cries, clashing weapons, shrieks of terror, and the hissing of the serpent swarm blended into a single, chaotic roar. The entire valley instantly turned into a living hell. Though the Chu Imperial Guard were brave and fierce, faced with the overwhelming swarm of snakes, they had no idea how to fight back. Those snakes were everywhere, slipping into their robes, biting their limbs, and injecting deadly venom. Very quickly, a vast number of Chu soldiers soldiers collapsed to the ground, struggling in agony and wailing piteously. The scene was too horrific to watch. Lu Chen drew his sword, his dark imperial robe exceptionally striking amidst the bloody battle. Leading from the front, he charged into the chaotic fray. The elite guards of Bai Yi followed closely behind him, locking in fierce combat with the Chu army. His swordsmanship was sharp, and every strike was lethal. Within moments, he had slain several commanders of the Chu Imperial Guard. He looked back at me and shouted,
Fu Yao, do not hold back. Today, we will make Xiao Jinghuai pay the price.
A cold sneer appeared on the corner of my lips. I blew into the bone flute once more. The melody became even sharper, carrying an even stronger command. I won't. With a shift of my feet, my figure glided like a phantom, straight toward Xiao Jinghuai. The bone flute danced in my hands. Wherever the music drifted, the snakes grew even more frenzied, surging toward Xiao Jinghuai's direction, to trap and surround him.
Stop her.
Xiao Jinghuai roared, his eyes filled with sheer terror. The guards around him rushed forward one after another, trying to stop me, but as soon as they got close to me, they were ensnared by the surrounding snakes, instantly collapsing to the ground and breathing their last. Seeing that his guards couldn't stop me, the fear in Xiao Jinghuai's eyes intensified. He gripped his spear tightly, spurred his horse forward, and thrust it toward me. The spear came with a fierce, howling wind, pointing straight at my heart, aiming to kill me in a single strike.
Today, you must meet your end.
You still have the nerve to call my name? I sidestepped to dodge his spear, swung my bone flute, and struck his spear shaft hard, producing a dull, heavy thud. The shock numbed Xiao Jinghuai's arm, and the spear nearly slipped from his hand. The hatred in my eyes surged, my voice raspy and tearing with emotion. Back then, you crippled my limbs, abandoned me in a perilous place, and left me to suffer endlessly in the mass grave, wishing I were dead. In this life, you harmed my father, harmed my clan, harmed my sister, and caused my Miaojiang people's blood to flow like a river, destroying our homes and families. Today, don't even think about leaving here alive. The bone flute in my hand turned into a weapon. As I clashed with Xiao Jinghuai's spear, I had already mastered Miaojiang martial arts in my past life, and in this life, I had awakened the source power of the bone flute, greatly increasing my spiritual energy. Xiao Jinghuai was no match for me at all. We traded dozens of blows, and his strength gradually faltered, his moves becoming increasingly disorganized. Finally, a strike from my flute forced him back several steps, knocking him off his horse. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, staining the dirt beneath him red. I approached with my flute raised, stepping up to him one pace at a time. The tip of the bone flute pressed against his throat, carrying a bone-chilling coldness. A cold light flashed in my eyes, devoid of even a shred of mercy. Xiao Jinghuai lay on the ground, looking up at me, with eyes full of terror and resentment. He tried to struggle, trying to crawl back up, but he was tightly surrounded by the snakes, and could not move an inch. The snakes flicked their tongues, pressing against his skin, only a fraction of an inch away from sinking their fangs in.
Fu Yao, don't hurt me.
He was finally terrified, his voice carrying a desperate plea.
I can pardon you of all crimes. I can abolish that secret decree. I can let the Miaojiang clan return to their homeland. I can even crown you as empress again, making you the most noble woman in the state of Chu. Fu Yao, I beg of you, spare me.
Too late, I said coldly, without a single trace of warmth in my eyes. From the moment you harmed my father, from the moment you made my Miaojiang people's blood flow like a river, everything was already too late. I recalled my past self, severely crippled by him, lying in the mass grave, listening to the joyful laughter of him and Su Jiji. I recalled the Miaojiang of this life, my clansmen brutally killed, their corpses littering the ground. I recalled my sister's final, terrified cry. The hatred in my heart reached its absolute peak. Back then, for the sake of Sujiji and for your position as crown prince, you caused my 7-month-old unborn child to meet a tragic end. That child was also your own flesh and blood, yet you didn't hesitate for even a single second. And now, for your Chu empire, and for your own selfish desires, you hurt my father, my people, and my sister, bringing this catastrophe upon my Miao clan. I spoke deliberately, emphasizing every word, gritting my teeth. Every single word carried a deep, burning hatred. Until this debt is fully settled by me, you shall not know a single day of peace. Today, I will make you pay the price. His face was filled with terror, his eyes completely devoid of hope. He wanted to say something more, but I gave him no chance. I raised the bone flute and spoke coldly, my voice carrying an absolute command that echoed through the entire valley. Pay the price. For the blood of the Miao people. The bone flute let out a sharp, piercing sound, clear yet fierce. As the sound reached the snakes, the swarm erupted instantly. Countless venomous snakes surged from all directions, lunging at Xiao Jinghuai, submerging him in an instant. Xiao Jinghuai's agonizing screams echoed between heaven and earth. The sound was filled with pain and despair. He struggled frantically amidst the swarm, screaming and begging for mercy, but the snakes showed no mercy whatsoever. They kept closing in on him, injecting their deadly venom. Finally, his screams gradually faded, until there was no movement left. The snakes slowly dispersed, revealing Xiao Jinghuai's body. He lay in the blood-stained dirt, now nothing but a cold corpse. I stared at the pool of blood, staring at Xiao Jinghuai's body, silent for a long time. There was no sense of pleasure in my heart, only endless exhaustion and sorrow. The hatred of 2 lifetimes was finally avenged, but my father, my people, and my sister could never come back. Lu Chen walked up to my side and said softly,
"It is over."
I slowly closed my eyes, and tears finally slipped from my lashes. It is not over. This is only the beginning. From this day forward, the Miao clan will no longer serve the Chu Empire. From this day forward, Fu Yao shall rule, with the bone flute as my blade. Those who wrong me shall pay the price.